Welcome to the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may have missed, with your hosts AJ Kuti and Jason Gordon. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We are the Reschool'd podcast. So it's the show. You know what? We're just going to keep that in there. This is the show that discusses all the things that schools may not have prepared you for. As always, I'm AJ. Sitting across me, Jason. Jason, how are you doing today?
Doing great, AJ. It's a great end of semester, wintry fall day. So it's good. It's good.
Raining all day.
How about you?
It's good. I'm excited because we have a special guest this episode. My little brother is here, and he's going to be joining us on this episode. So I want to introduce everyone to my baby brother, John. John, how you doing?
Good, and yourself?
I'm doing fabulous. You're sitting next to me, so.
Oh, this is a good opportunity. We get to hear some insights on AJ, some deeper third party point of view.
Yeah, no, we're going to keep that to a minimum. So, today's episode, when I found out that John was going to be here with us, and I know your story, I had an idea for a topic that I really wanted to discuss because you two have something in common with each other. But I've kept it from you, so neither one of you have an idea what we're talking about. So this is really going to be off the cuff. This is going to be like, you can't prepare for this. But it's nothing major. But I thought it would be really cool. You know, right now there's a lot of, obviously students are going to school, but there's a lot of families in school. And Jason, you said that you had an older brother go through school, and John had an older brother that went through school. Me. I would want to see what it's like to be the younger brother going through school. I want to hear about that because I know what it's like to be the first to go through school. So how does that sound to y'all?
That sounds good. I've had a lot of insight on this younger sibling, older sibling dynamic over the years. My wife's an older sibling and being a younger sibling to see how we match up. I don't know, John, what do you think?
I don't know. I think it's pretty interesting how, I have two older brothers, of course, so I don't know about you, but I got to watch it twice before I had to do it, so it'll be interesting.
He is the baby.
How far ahead are AJ? How far are AJ and your other brother ahead of you?
So age-wise, you got 2 years and then 11 years, so a fair amount of time, but with AJ being so much older.
11 years, that's like a second parent.
That's a crappy parent. That would have been a rough one for him.
All right, AJ, you want to hear the perspectives? Go ahead, man. You got to fire off some questions. But before you do, let me remind everybody, visit us on our website, reschool.com. That's Reschool with a D, not an ED. Check us out on the social media handles. Once again, that's one of the best ways to communicate with us. And of course, you gotta like us on your favorite podcasting app. We need all those stars so people think we're the best thing since sliced bread and keep coming to listen to our show. And then lastly, make sure you're sending us messages letting us know what you want to hear about, because otherwise you're going to leave it up to us to come up with topics. We'd rather talk about what you want to talk about. So anyway, that being said, I'm ready to jump in and get some perspective on younger, older brother.
So first off, he was just saying, like, we have a middle brother that's 2 years older than he is, and then I'm 11 years older than he is. How old is your brother compared to you?
He is 14 months.
Oh, so y'all are pretty close. Okay. So that
we're very close to what do you call it? Irish twins.
Yeah, y'all are very, like, this will give a good dynamic because you have different age gaps to see, kind of, because he was still going through school when you were going through school. I'd already been finished when when John was going through college. So this will give a good dynamic.
Oh yeah, I had a really unique perspective because I went to the same college as my brother. We were still around each other almost every day. We majored in the same major. Everything. We actually started out in the same majors, changed majors at the same time. We did our study abroads together, everything. Oh,
wow.
So yeah, there was a, and at that point in time, we were not great friends either. We did not get along for the most part. So that added a whole nother dynamic to it. So yeah.
Well, I know. So John and our other brother, Cam, they went to the same school together. They weren't in the same they weren't in the same major, but they were in the same school. They both went through the school of business. So, yeah. So okay. So
well, John, did you guys hang together during school and stuff like that? Were y'all close?
A little bit, but we both worked outside of school. So alongside going to school, we worked full time. So we had our lives pretty busy outside, and we were not the same major, even though we were still both in the College of Business. So.
Wow. So you did the full-time work thing while you were doing it. That's that's tough. Doesn't leave a whole lot of time for socializing and other stuff, does it?
No, sir. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the whole work dynamic, and we both still lived at home. It was interesting, but we got through it.
Oh, well, see, that adds a whole nother shell to it, right? I mean, you were living together at the same time. So, my brother and I, we lived separately and things like that, but we pretty well shared a best friend. So once again, just everything was inextricably tied. Our professors would talk to us about each other. We were, by some of our favorite professors, we were kind of known as the Gordon brothers.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it added this whole new thing there. It was, you would think it would be annoying in some ways, and to a certain extent, I could see situations where it could be, but it was never annoying. It was actually better because of it, and I think because of it, my brother and I actually grew closer. Because, man, when we were younger, we could not stand each other. I mean, I can remember this one time when we were really young, we would fight like crazy. And we're on a farm, right? And I was the younger brother. So unless I was extremely mad, I normally lost when we were younger. So I would avoid it. And my brother had this huge temper. But one time I got mad and I hit him with a broom handle.
Wow.
And it broke the broom handle across
Jesus, you didn't hit him. You smacked him.
Oh, yeah. We did this all the way up until our teens.
Jeez.
So it wasn't a passive, just
little, it wasn't like a love tap,
spat or whatever. I mean, we would throw down and fight. It was, and there were times I swear if he would have caught me, he would have killed me. But somehow we stayed kind of, on the same path together, same school, same major, same experiences and all that stuff. We really didn't kind of diverge roads until I graduated, because he stayed in the same town and was still working at the same place when I graduated. And then I went on to law school when I moved to a different town. And that's kind of when our constant involvement together kind of, parted ways.
So my first question to both of you is, did what you saw from your older brother, or in John's case, brothers, did that have any influence on any of the decisions you made while you were in college?
I can go and start off with that, AJ. And again, I appreciate y'all having me here. And I'll just start off by saying it really didn't have much an effect on me, as much as you may think, because I started off with a major outside of the business school, and then I came into the business school, and Cam was already in the business school when I got there, but he actually also started off with a different major his first 2 years, and completely outside of the College of Business as well. So it was an interesting dynamic, but he ended up majoring in marketing and finishing out on that, and I went more of a completely different route with supply chain management and finance. So as far as, the studying and techniques and all those things, we really didn't have much curriculum in common other than your gen eds, and those were 2 years past by the time I got there. So it didn't have a ton of an effect on what I did anyways.
Well, you were lucky then, I would say, because my brother's path had a huge effect on what I did. Well, there were obviously some negatives and things like that, because there were things I saw during his year. I would actually come visit him the year he was in college ahead of me. And then there were all these expectations I had, and it seemed like so many of those didn't materialize, like they weren't as good. And then there were so many things that I ran into that I didn't notice. But having him, so we both started out biology, and having him as a biology major to start with and seeing things about the classes, that gave me a lot of insight, because he and I were the first people in our back side of the family to go to college. And so we didn't really know much about it. Right. And our parents are more hands off type scenario. You know, they dropped us off at college, helped us move in. But other than that, they'd kind of, just check in every several months and say, you passing everything, you need anything. All right, good. But that was it, and actually after about year one, that quit, it was just that they let us do our thing there. And luckily it worked out for us. But having him going through it was a major help. I got to see, things about the curriculum that was important, things about, everything from because we lived off of campus for 3 of the 4 years, understanding how that would work out. Part of, I guess it allowed for every decision that I made to be influenced by somebody I already trusted. Right.
Yeah.
And it just, and not many people get that. So I was extremely lucky. And I'm not going to lie, I came to college in many ways so unprepared for the experience. And, that's why AJ and I both together wanted to do this podcast, so we could help people understand what we didn't understand going into it, or what we learned as part of it. And for me, my brother was a huge help. I mean, it was a huge, huge thing to be able to see what he went through ahead of time. Now, I still made my own mistakes and everything, don't get me wrong, but he cut a lot of those out. And I can 100% say watching him helped direct my path a great deal. I certainly wouldn't have done the things I did without, kind of collaboratively doing it with him. It made a huge difference. So, yeah.
I think looking at our story too, well, first realizing that I got accounting, he's got supply chain and finance, and our middle brother's got marketing. You would think we'd be really good at business. We just started a business consulting firm. But
I'm about to say, y'all got all the bases covered, man.
So, but I think it wasn't necessarily me that had an influence on his direction in college, but it seemed just based, hearing him talking the stories and stuff, that it was our dad, because all three of us started somewhere else that was not in the business school. And then we converted over to the business school. We were like, you know what? We're going to go back, because that's what we knew. I mean, that's what we grew up with. Our dad was the dean of the School of Business. He was a professor in business first, then he moved to dean, and then he moved to dean to another school. And it was just one of those things that, we knew it. We knew the importance behind it, what it could provide, what opportunities it could provide. And we kind of made that decision into what we wanted our life to be. I didn't say I was going to pick this because I knew what I wanted to be. I just had to figure out what vehicle I was going to use to get me there. And it was just going to be, for me, it was through accounting. And so, yeah, I don't think it was, at least from my perspective, I don't think it was directly from me. I think it was more from our dad. Did your brother, since being the first one, did he ever do anything? Did any of his screw ups ever affect you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've told the story before about how he destroyed a hotel room in southern Chile. I think we were both out partying or whatever on our study abroad, and we were in the south of Chile. I forget the town. It was down there near Patagonia, and we were staying in the same room together, and he stumbles back early in the night and passes out in the shower and creates a perfect little funnel where water pours out of the shower into the hotel room.
Oh, no.
And it flooded the hotel room.
Oh, that's awesome.
The people in the room below him, alerted management comes in and tells us, hey, and they find White passed out in the shower and that type of thing, because water was dripping from the chandelier in the room below, that type of thing. And so it was a big deal. I stayed out most of the night. That's kind of the Hispanic culture. Yeah. Like when you go out dancing, clubbing, you stay out all night. It's just, you don't even get started till midnight sometimes, right?
That's
So
way past my
staying out till
bedtime.
6, 7 a.m. is not a big deal. So I come stumbling in, just drained completely from dancing and stuff all night. And find a whole scenario, and it's a big uproar and big deal there and stuff like that. So he was still so intoxicated from his adventures, and I at least had some of my wits about me. So I had to negotiate with the hotel to let us get out of there without getting arrested, and we had to cobble together money to pay for the damages. If it had been in the U.S., it'd have been thousands of dollars. I think we left them like $300, $400. But that's all we had. And then, like I say, yeah. So, I mean, there was simple stuff like that. He started down the major road in biology ahead of time. And I saw some, things he ran into. Like, I had no idea what were the tough classes. I had no idea what that type of stuff was, so that helped me more than anything. Watching him, and I'm not sure he made too many mistakes in that regard, but it basically helped me understand a system I wouldn't have understood otherwise, because I think without watching him, I probably would just buried my head and stuck with a major and that type of thing. I'm not sure I would have started working in restaurants, which throughout my entire college experience, I think I probably learned as much from that experience about life and people as anybody, and he led me through that path. So I'm one of those examples where a brother that close to you or a sibling that close to you, where they start to experience the same things as you, if you do a lot of the things together, right? One, I'd say you kind of learn from each other. It enhances the experience, and it does. It avoids otherwise a lot of mistakes. This show, this podcast can only be so much of a big brother to you, right? We can only get into the details so much. There's something about having a partner in it that goes through it, and you share feedback and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, all of that made a huge difference. So,
John, did my screw ups or Cam's screw ups ever ruin anything for you?
Well, Jason, you came at it with a little bit different perspective than the way that I came at it. But I will say that having AJ as an older brother and going through school,
it was the best thing ever.
Aside from that, no, I'm just kidding. No, it's just you can always the great thing about it, and you said somebody so close to you can trust. The great thing about it is you can always refer back to them should any question or any major decision come up. You can always refer back to them, no matter when it is, what it's about, anything of that nature. Because it was also, I will say, an interesting dynamic because our dad was all three of our deans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, when most people hear that, they think that we were number one star students. I will speak for myself and tell you that I was not. But Cam and I, whenever we needed something, we always typically asked him questions. What should we do here? What should we do there? And then also, of course, referred back to AJ when needed. I will backtrack just a few minutes there and just tell you that Cam and I's dynamic was also interesting because we weren't really that close dealing with school, but we worked together. And when we started working together, I ended up being his leader, if you will. So that created an interesting dynamic. And if anybody's like me, you kind of expect a lot or too much out of your family members. So that was interesting. And, we kind of honestly spread apart a little bit because of that for different reasons and whatnot. But when you were talking about your perspective on, how you went through it and your older brother, that was a major thing for us because school, we didn't really relate a whole lot. with school. It was more stuff outside of it.
So I have noticed this thing with other, folks that I knew. They went to college with their siblings, things like that. For some people, you start to grow apart in college, right? You're always together in high school or growing up. You go off to college, you choose your major, they choose their major, you get a significant other, you after that career stuff, that's the fork in the road, it seems like. With my brother, while we always, were together throughout that whole time, we fought so badly, didn't get along in high school. College, it got a lot better, right? We were voluntarily around each other a lot more, not out of necessity, but more because convenience, and sometimes we even wanted to. But it was then that we started to understand each other better, and it was, I would say, after that we really started to become good friends right there at the end, and then moving forward. So for me, in my situation at least, it was I don't know, we grew together where lots of people will grow apart, and I think you can expect both of them. I mean, some people you need to grow apart, right? It's that autonomy you need that'll help you grow up type scenario. Other people, right, if it could be the gap you need to fill in your life to actually become closer to your family type scenario. So anyway, I've seen both of it. Luckily, I was the one where we grew together a lot more, and we're still close till today. I don't know how often I talk to him, but I talk to him at least, once a week, I would say, about whatever. He lives in the same city as me, type scenario. So yeah, and now we always shared a best friend, right? And that dynamic dropped out, where that best friend's not always around us as well. And yet we still remain friends and became even closer friends after that. So it's this natural evolution that happened, and I'm sure you experienced probably some level of that, either growing together or growing apart.
Yeah, I think everybody. I think we all do that because you have. I mean, you grow up together in the same household, and then you go off to college, and you get that like you said, the autonomy. And once you get that, you're like, okay, I'm going to be my own person. But then you realize the significance that other person or persons, like brothers, sisters, whatever, have when they're not there. And so then it naturally brings you back to the closer side. Yeah, I mean, that was pretty much exactly our situation. Now, I will say ours, I think it was more on his and Cam's because they're only 2 years apart. I was in college while he was in middle school. So that we had this good age difference going on, and we were experiencing two different things. So I was already married when he got into college. So it was just a different stage in both of our lives when we were going through that. So, but I'm sure it was very similar for him and Cam. So one of my questions is this is the one that I was really interested in because I know what it was like for me. Growing up in one area with our family. So I got in trouble way more than these two did, my two brothers. Because my mom always told me that, she tried to get me to be perfect, and then she realized after me that you couldn't be perfect, so she gave a lot more flexibility. That meant I went through a lot more spankings, a lot more groundings, and a lot more getting in trouble. I think I got more spankings in a month than they got in their whole life.
AJ, you might have just been worse.
That's a possibility. That is very true.
And maybe without that moderating variable, you wouldn't have been.
That is very, very, very
tolerable
true.
As a human.
That is very true. But I will say, because I went through, and like I said, my parents they wanted me to be the best I could be, and they saw stuff in me, and I appreciated that. But they expected top tier grades on everything. And then they became more understanding as, my other two brothers came up. Did your brother set a grade standard for you since he was the first?
I guess in a way, but in a way, no.
Okay.
So when I started out early on, and I believe I probably had some ADD or ADHD, because I was known for not being able to pay attention. It was really, really bad, and it caused me to be really slow. I was always the last one to finish my work if I ever did finish my work, that type of thing. But I was such a daydreamer. I think that's why I write so much stuff and create so much stuff now. I literally could not pay attention for 2 minutes straight in class. And I remember it hurt my feelings so bad. I had a 6th grade teacher who nicknamed me Foggy.
Oh, good
right?
Lord.
Because, oh yeah, it was absolutely crushing to me, because my teachers at that point in time, they had never heard of most of this stuff. So they weren't very understanding at all. But they were just flat mean about it. And other students picked on me so badly about it, type scenario. And so I was really slow. I made mostly B's, C's, even in 7th grade, made some D's and stuff like that all the way through. And my brother had unique ability. You know, my parents didn't go to school, so they didn't really have an approach to studying or anything like that. They never really helped us with our homework at any point in time in our life, or never made us read or anything like that. But my brother was one of these gifted people. Now, he didn't have the background for it, but on standardized tests and stuff, I remember it was around 3rd grade or so, you know, everybody in the school takes these assessment levels. And back then they said, you know, you're reading at this level, you're doing it this at this level. And, you know, I was below level on everything. I was like 1st grade, 2nd grade level in 3rd grade. You know, mathematics, I did pretty well, type scenario. But a couple of people in my class who did the best got, you know, post high school on a couple of things. My brother, zero educational background, got post high school on everything. I mean, he had this reputation. He was almost a little bit strange. People are like, well, you know, something's weird about that kid. But he was so incredibly intelligent. He just picked up on things so quickly. Now, I believe a lot of that's waned off. I wouldn't want to tell him that, but you know, and a lot of people do catch up that way, right? Geniuses tend to peter out and become normal later on in life, type scenario. And I think that happened to him, but he was so advanced above everybody else, with no effort, the natural ability. So it wasn't even comparable between us two. There was an ocean between us, right? And my parents, they wanted me to make decent grades, but they were happy as long as I was passing and stuff. But I will say this, and this will be the end to my little story. When at the end of 8th grade, my parents used to brag on my brother so much, and not really brag on him, just comment like, you know, yeah, Wyatt's pretty exceptional type thing, because everybody knew that. Yeah. Everybody knew who he was. It wasn't that big of a town, just a few thousand people. So everybody knew what or assumed what a shining star he was going to be at everything, because the intelligence factor. And they knew I was a little bit on the slow side, but they would say, yeah, but you know, Jason does okay too, type scenario. And that little bit of competitiveness in me. And, you know, I was very sensitive at that time and stuff. And, you know, came through a period where I got picked on a lot and stuff like that about not being able to pay attention and stuff. And it made me very combative, very aggressive. And it was about that time that I started to grow, and I became very athletic, type scenario. And I played a lot of sports at that time. So the competitive drive just got there. And I started studying and working so hard. I started working as hard at academics almost as I did at sports and things like that. And just in the 9th grade, I started making A's and never stopped. And it went through college. And I really, in high school, I didn't care that much. I'd make A's, B's. I don't think I made any C's or anything like that. But I studied enough, particularly on the harder subjects, to make certain I did well. So I was matching again, you know, that higher standard that I know I could. But in college, I doubled down, and, you know, the work ethic I put in. So, you know, I've talked about that on other episodes and stuff before, but that work ethic just carried over, and I learned how to study at that point, and then I made all A's through college. So anyway, to answer your question, that was a long story. for a quick question. But by and large, I didn't have, my brother and I were so far apart, there was never a standard put there for me. And my parents didn't hold me based upon my deficiencies, to a very high standard. But at some point, he and my parents' acknowledgement and approval became the motivating factor for me to become a workaholic towards academics. And then at some point in time, it was like snapping your fingers. I was never medicated or anything like that, and I think that made all the difference. I just snapped out of it. And then the inability to concentrate, the inability to pay attention, the inability to stop daydreaming just stopped. All of a sudden, I could. I still kept that creative ability to daydream, and that's kind of what the reason I write books and poems and songs and all that kind of stuff is because some of that ability to daydream stayed there. But yeah, it just snapped on its own. I kind of grew into, I don't know, the ability to focus mentally. And so anyway, but I can honestly say that thanks to my brother's, him being a point of aspiration, right, in terms of people's approval, that was a huge motivating factor. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I can say the same thing about my brothers, and I can thank my brothers, for the rest of my life for things, especially outside of school as well. But
I'm gonna hold you to that too.
just to get back to that, more than our parents, because our parents didn't really compare each other,
because they knew we were better than you. Which one was better?
Right. So they thought, anyways.
The least bad, AJ.
yeah, exactly.
But the thing that was, to me, and I don't know if you experienced this at all, Jason, but for me, more than our parents, when the same teachers and professors compared Cam and I, that's when it really set off, the competitiveness. When they would, more in grade school and college, but because in college things, obviously are a little bit different, but we had a teacher when we were younger that really didn't like Cam, and neither of us were troubled kids at all. Like, we didn't really cause a ruckus at all. I might have been a class clown here and there. It happens. But there was this one teacher, and then she ended up not liking me because she didn't like Cam, and so on and so forth. And
I wasn't in the story, notice.
But those kinds of things, kind of, I guess, not really stereotyping, but the fact that we were brothers and everybody knew it, those kinds of things were the most frustrating. But I learned later on down the line that, one, all three of us are competitive, right, in everything we do. It's not really just sports or just this or just that. Sports is definitely at the top of the list because we all played sports. Not all at the collegiate level, but we all played sports growing up.
That was just me. I was still the better one on that one too.
Right.
A finely tuned athlete, AJ.
Exactly. I look like it too.
But yeah, it was interesting. Not only, our parents not really, comparing, but it was also outside factors other than that. But definitely an interesting dynamic, but one that I would not change for anything.
So, did you, when you were going through college, and with your brother, did y'all, and I guess growing up too, did y'all have like really different personalities? Like, us three have very different personalities.
Oh yeah, it was night and day, and I think growing up, that's why we didn't get along well. Mm-hmm. All I really cared about, growing up on a farm, like if you would hear my brother and I speak, I have a strong Southern accent, and I've done a lot to mitigate how strong it is over the years.
It was worse?
Really? Oh, it was significantly worse. I don't want to call it bad. I don't care about, I don't mind my accent that much, but, there is this whole perception thing about level of intelligence and all that stuff based upon your accent. So I did a lot to try to dial it back. I couldn't avoid it completely. But my brother hardly had an accent. He kept to himself a lot. I did everything with my dad, which was a lot of farming stuff. I hunted, I fished a lot when I was younger, and the folks I were around were, we were kind of redneck. That's the best way to put it. And my brother hardly did any of that. He wasn't into the guns and fishing and horseback riding and all that stuff that I was into. He played music. He read a lot. He was really into animals. At like 10 years old, he had memorized pretty much every type of fish. He had a lizard, he had birds, he had aquariums that he took care of. Loved dogs. He lived for a couple summers with at this training facility that trained dogs for hunt test and white coat, that stuff where they direct them with hand signals to find things and stuff like that. So he was for lack of a better way of saying it, my brother was a strange bird from where we came from. And I was overly traditional. I was just a little redneck. And so we clashed a lot on that, having completely separate interests, that type of thing. He didn't care anything about sports whatsoever when we got older. And once I hit somewhere around 12 years old, I quit doing all the hunting, fishing, all that other stuff, and I just 100% fell in love with sports, right? And when there wasn't a season in, I was playing tennis. Luckily, we had public courts and things like that, and I, had friends who knew how to play tennis that would teach me, give me lessons and stuff like that. So I'd play sometimes 6-8 hours a day at something almost every day, and Wyatt would completely do his own thing. So much of the time in high school, we were separate, right? That type of thing. We just kind of reported home together at the same time, and we barely talked to each other. So our differences in personalities kind of what created that fork in the road early on. And then college, we started to understand each other and came back together more. So it seems like you and your brothers were just a little bit more alike in personality or an interest in things like that.
Not really. No, not really.
No.
Like, it's very similar to what you were saying, because when you were saying that about knowing the birds and the fish and that I looked at John, because that's our middle brother. I mean, you could call him about any animal. He's like, it's just an animal. Or you can tell him, so he's the hunter, fisher, gatherman of the family. Like he just knows that stuff. That's very passionate. He loves, bows. He loves guns. He when he was growing up, he would do some trick shots with bows that were just ridiculous. And that's just his strong passion. I am very passionate in sports, probably more so than the other two, because I grew up playing them more so than the other two. But I love watching all kinds of sports, playing all kinds of sports, and I also love technology. Technology is always a big thing of mine. And then John has grown towards the more like cars. That seems to be kind of his passion. So yeah, we're very, very different. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, as far as personalities go, other than what AJ just talked about, they differ as well, and maybe AJ with a higher level view of Cam and I can speak to that, but him being the older brother, obviously we saw what he did, but with our parents not really being a whole very interested in or us learning a lot from our parents, Cam and I really found anything that we wanted to do and just tried it. Whether, the whole fishing and hunting and all that stuff, neither of our parents really, did all that. So we didn't really do a whole lot with our mom and dad in terms of that. They would go do it with us, but we'd have to find our way first, and so on and so forth. And then with me, I ended up, doing a little bit of the dirt track racing in college, and that was kind of out of left field as well. So, again, I had to find that myself, and they would go, support me in that, but it didn't come from anything. It just, I don't know, it just kind of sparked out of nowhere.
Well, John, I think the real question now is this. What's your, if you're in automobiles, what's your favorite car? What's your dream car?
67 Camaro right off the top.
Oh, yeah?
Absolutely. RSSS with the hideaway headlights and all that stuff. Hugger orange.
Not that he's thought about it before or nothing.
American muscle, huh?
For sure.
Any late 70s model Stingray Corvette.
Oh, I would for sure. I agree with you on that. I'd love one of those too.
Yeah.
More importantly, who's going to win the World Cup? Can we get back to sports?
I don't know, AJ. You're the sports guy. Who is going to win the World Cup?
I have no idea. It's been such a weird one. It's been a crazy one. I want to end it with this, though, because I wanted to make sure we get this, because I want to bring it back full circle for the listeners. For the both of you, if there's one piece of advice you can give the listeners who maybe are going to college or will be going to college here soon with a sibling, whether it be younger or older, to make the experience better, what would you tell them? What would the advice be?
For me, it would be use them as a guide, but try to be your own person as well, because at the end of the day, much like my brothers, we chose different career paths, different jobs and all that. So I would just encourage, all the listeners to, do what they think's right, but use their older siblings as a guide, especially, when they're, successful and doing all these great things, much like I did.
Well, I'd say pretty much that's great advice. I mean, I'd say the same thing, but I'd add one thing: to make certain, whether you're the older sibling or the younger sibling, that you try to be a positive influence on the other one, right? You help them develop their path as well, because my brother's a year older, but I was, I think, a positive influence on him in many ways, and he was certainly a positive influence on me. With him, I think I influenced him to dial back the partying a little bit, or to focus on things a little bit more. I think I motivated him to work a little harder towards some things because he never had to before, and he certainly motivated me in a million different ways. And like I say, a lot of his the things that he did, the mistakes that he made, and the things that he did correctly were important to me. So we both helped each other out. And I would say do the best to make certain you have a similar type of situation.
Well, this has been a good show. It's been fun. I was like I said, I've been holding this one just because I wanted to see what y'all were going to say about having older brothers in college. So, well, before we head out, Jason, you got anything to say?
Well, just say thanks to John. John, we appreciate having you on, man. It was really nice having a third party in here, especially somebody who knew AJ so well. That's good.
That was frightening.
But before we get out of here, remind everybody, hit us up on the website and send us some messages. Let us know what you want to talk about, and we'll talk about them. Of course, like I say, we're going to need all those stars on your favorite podcasting app. So please do that for us. That would help us a ton. If you really feel motivated, then share our cast with some other folks. Get some new listeners. That would help us a lot.
Awesome. Well, we hope you enjoyed the show. Until next time, we hope to see you there. Goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Reschool'd podcast. Be sure to head over to reschool'd.com for news and other information on things we're getting into.